So I was having a discussion on the Discord for TF Slag, and one of our Patreon listeners, Ian McRobbie, recently picked up the commemorative series G1 Optimus Prime, like the very first reissue in the American market of Transformers. Now, I mean, you could technically talk about the Classics 1991 Gold package being reissues, but this was the first time we ever had major reissues of Transformers, and the very first wave of those was Optimus Prime, Hot Rod, although it was called Rodimus Major because they didn't have the rights at the time,
Right.
and Ultra Magnus. And he was asking, like, what's so different about these ones and stuff and everything, because it was, he started picking up the recent reissues that started showing up in Walmart recently, and now he's kind of looking backwards, but looking at a more, more affordable, directions to go about it. And he picked up this Optimus Prime. It's the first time he's ever had the mold. So I looked at it as a good excuse to kind of go through the American reissue market of Generation 1 toys and explain like what to look out for and what to compare to and stuff like that. Now, like I said, the commemorative series came out in the early 2000s, and at first they were trying to mimic Generation 1 packaging, without having like the top flap that would normally hang from a hook. But it still had that boxy kind of thing. And again, it was Optimus Prime, it was, Rodimus Major, Hot Rod, and Ultra Magnus. And the biggest noticeable change from those was the safety issues were different today. So Optimus Prime's smokestacks were cut short, and most characters, if they had some kind of spring-loaded missiles, those missiles were made much larger. With the Optimus Prime, the missiles that were put into Roller's combat deck turrets, if you will, the black missiles, they were extended extremely long to the point that they almost looked like hands. They were just so long. They were like arms. And same thing with Ultra Magnus's missiles that came, like he has his red missiles. Yeah. They were comically large also, that they kind of threw off the silhouette of Ultra Magnus. When they did the second wave, they had Starscream, same thing. The missiles were what suffered, essentially. They were made extremely large, but otherwise everything was kind of kept the same. And they also did, which was kind of an interesting change, was they brought over God Ginrai, and they called it Power Master Optimus Prime with Apex armor. So you actually got the God Bomber armor that made Power Master Optimus Prime God Ginrai, if you will. And what was cool about it, because that mold is vastly different than what America got. Because that mold had die cast, it had retractable fists, it had chrome in different areas. So that one, in all honesty, even though again there's little changes on it, again those smokestacks and stuff like that, there's little changes on it that are different from the Japanese release, but it's probably the cheapest way you could get that mold, because the Japanese release is quite expensive, where this American one is quite a lot cheaper. I think like at one point I remember people were picking up as like $40, $50 at most, where a God Ginrai could run you $300. So, but it's a great mold, great mold, a classic mold. I know Wendell has a close connection to that mold. So so like, and again, that reissue of it was really cool, but again, very little differences there. And then after this, from Series 3 onwards, like the third wave onward, they started copying what Japan was doing from the book box reissues, as we call them, which were, they had Dreamwave style art, usually art that was taken directly from Dreamwave Productions at the time, the comic book series. And they would have a book, we call it a book box, which is, it was what's it called there? Oh my God, I'm drawing a blank here. With Velcro. There we go.
Oh, that's the word you're looking for.
Yeah, I was like, why am I blanking on Velcro? Oh my God. So yeah, they would have like the Velcro kind of connection stuff and everything, so you could open up the box and everything and see the figure on the inside. And they were copying that style from Takara. And what was cool about it was you were getting a lot of, molds that back in the day were very fragile, because up to this point, all of the stuff that was being released, the Optimus Prime, the Rodimus, the Ultra Magnus, the Power Master one, even the Starscream, pretty sturdy toys, fragile in some areas, but not too bad. But then they started diving into those Autobot cars, which, back in the day were notorious for all kinds of, problems of being fragile figures, especially when they were older and the plastic was more brittle. But it started with Autobot Jazz. Again, the only changes among most of these were usually the size of the missiles, just for safety reasons. But otherwise, the die-cast was kept and everything like that. If there was changes that were done to the Japanese releases, so to give an example, Jazz had a little smirk on his face that was added for the Japanese one. It would then be present on the American version here. So Jazz, they did Silver Streak, which was Blue Streak. They did Thundercracker. They did Prowl. They did Red Alert, Skywarp, Hoist, Inferno, Trax, Grapple, Smokescreen, Dirge. Then they even did Rodimus Prime. The good thing with Rodimus Prime was he actually had no changes to him at all compared to the original release or anything. But it was the plastic toe version, not the die-cast metal toe version. Then they, as the line was dying down, they started doing more like store exclusives. So Toys R Us got Sideswipe and Skids as exclusives, and then I believe it was KB Toys got Astro Train as an exclusive, and then it ended up in mass retail afterwards. And Astro Train also did not have any changes done to him at all, to my knowledge. And then the last release of the commemorative series was Ricochet, and Ricochet, which was the black repaint of Jazz. Now again, just like Power Master Optimus Prime, one of those toys that originally was a Japanese release, very tough to get, very expensive, got reissued in Japan, so that alleviated the difficulty of picking it up, but then it got reissued here in America.
Yeah.
So if you're looking to get Ricochet...
Well, does it count as being a reissue if it was never released in America?
Well, yeah, you're probably right there. It's a reissue for Japan. And so, but again,
and a first release for America.
First release for America, and again, really, really awesome, because if you're looking for the character of Stepper, which is what Ricochet is based on, that's the cheapest way. And I've seen this thing as cheap as $30 mint in box. So that's
I have one too. Mine is signed.
Yeah.
Yay.
So that's a really like cool one to pick up also. And then of course, as time progressed, the commemorative line kind of evolved, and Classics started to really become a thing, and they started putting the reissues under the Classics banner and the Universe 1.0 banner. And so we got like a G1 Soundwave that came with Ravage and Laserbeak under commemorative series. I believe it was a Toys R Us exclusive. And what was interesting about that one was they actually used the mold for Sound Blaster, which had the larger cassette door, which could hold 2 cassettes at once. So that was a really weird oddity. So like if you pick up that reissue, it's actually different than the original G1 Soundwave in a big way, because they used a different mold. And then in the Universe line, we got a few reissues in that. We got the original Insecticons got reissued in a 3-pack, which they didn't have anything changed to them at all. We got Perceptor, which again, it was just the missiles that were kind of changed. And then Autobot Blaster kind of was originally a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive, then started showing up at smaller conventions like Fan Expo and New York Comic-Con, and then showed up even at Winners and Marshalls, and then started showing up in mass retail everywhere. And that was like Autobot Blaster, and he came with Eject, Ramhorn, and Steeljaw. But what was interesting about that Blaster was, even though he was unchanged mold-wise, they changed the tone of the gray and the red of the plastic. So some people argue it makes him look a little more show accurate, but there was a drastic change in terms of those colors and stuff.
Okay.
And then as time progresses, like we've had other reissues throughout the years. Like now the reissues we have the likes of we had the Seeker Jets, the Coneheads specifically. They got a reissue box set. And like now we're even like again, how this whole conversation started, the stuff that we got today, like the 4 mini bots, Devastator and Hot Rod. Like the Hot Rod, what's different about him is he's exactly the same like the original toy, but his stickers are different. They're more kind of chromy. His toes are die-cast metal, but they're actually painted black. The original G1 toy didn't have painted black toes, so this actually kind of better than the original. It was just normal die cast. And but otherwise, it's the same toy. There's nothing really changed about it at all. The Constructicons are kind of the same thing. Not a lot has really changed about it, although some people argue that the plastic quality is a little weaker on the reissue. I have it mint in box. I have not opened it, so I don't know. I've owned like so many complete sets of G1 Constructicons, and already those being used ones could vary in quality because of how loose they could be and how much the combine mode could hold together. So I don't know if it's fans that have never messed with a G1 Constructicon mold and just going like, wow, he doesn't really stay together well. It's like, well, because
he never did.
Because the Scramble City combiners, as I like to call them, they had their own engineering, their own idea, and they held together pretty well. You know, the aerial bots, the Stunticons and stuff. Devastator was his own thing. Kind of, you know, there was a small little hook piece he kind of hooked on there, and that was that. You know, like everyone was kind of holding together by a thread in a lot of ways. So a lot of people have been complaining about that one, but I can't confirm right now how different it is. And then, of course, the mini bots. Now, the thing with the mini bots is that they're actually not based on their original Generation 1 reissues. They're actually based on a reissue that Japan did, and I believe it was 2008, of the Encore series, which was they took Warpath, Outback, Pipes, a whole bunch of them, and Tailpipe, and of course Bumblebee, and they just repainted them and reissued them. The Bumblebee got a new face sculpt and some extra paint applications. Outback got some extra paint applications. So essentially what these reissues, the mini bots, what they were, is they're more updated repaints of those old molds. So like the Outback itself, and the funny thing is they're all also, to keep in mind, these reissues are not 100% like the Japanese ones. There's still little minor paint differences. Like the Outback, the Japanese one had some dark blue outlining around the visor, where the American reissue that we have now doesn't have that dark blue, but it still has the blue visor, which is brand new. Little subtle changes, but nothing too major. But, I mean, it's something that if you want to own a G1 Bumblebee, that's probably the best version you could get, is the one that's in stores right now, because it has that more show-accurate head as opposed to the original one that didn't. So there's a lot. Like me personally, I've never been a big fan of reissues unless it either gives you a toy that is so rare that it gives everyone an opportunity to enjoy it. That's the first reason why I would like reissues is, you know, like I own an original G1 Minerva, but I still think it's funny how Hasbro has never released a G1 Minerva reissue or Takara, because I'm pretty sure someone's going to buy it. Because if people wanted to own Minerva, you either spend thousands of dollars or you don't own it. And there's so little of that character to begin with, in terms, like there's no classics version of Minerva yet. You know, so for a lot of people to get that character, to own a figure of that character outside of, let's say, like a third party or like a Wonderfest model kit or something, there isn't much that you could buy. So there's just that original G1 toy that's thousands of dollars, unfortunately, mint in box. So that's something that if they did reissues of that, it would be appreciated. It's the same thing like with Stepper. When Stepper got his reissue, that old Japanese toy all of a sudden lost its market.
Yeah.
Because now anyone could get a Stepper. You know,
yay me.
Which is good. Which is very good. So to me, that's the first reason why I think reissue should exist, is to fill the gaps of really expensive Transformer toys that fans normally could not be able to get because of the expensive entry level. Number two, toys that have not stood the test of time, that need to be reissued to be updated with proper plastics. And what I mean by that is there's certain Transformer toys that the plastics they were originally cast in they pretty much had a shelf life. They were fragile, gold plastic syndrome. So characters like Black Zarek, Black Zarek, first of all, is an extremely expensive Generation 1 toy, probably upwards of $600 to $700 to $800 complete. The problem with Black Zarek is even if you get him complete, 100% perfect, you do not transform him because he is very fragile. So it sucks that even as a hardcore collector, if you picked up a Black Zarek, you live in fear of transforming this extremely fragile toy that could break on you. So it's something that if Takara, like I could see Takara doing, was they could reissue Scorponok and then do a Black Zarek repaint. But they could use something that isn't the gold plastic we're familiar with today. They could do something that's much more stable. So again, giving people an opportunity to get toys that were very fragile and releasing them today. And like to use some modern examples, the Beast Wars Rat Trap, the Transmetal, suffers heavily from flaking of the chrome.
Right, yeah.
So they did a Rat Trap reissue from the 10th anniversary Beast Wars line, and now the chrome doesn't suffer from that. So that's one example. Now, granted, it's a slightly different colors than the original Transmetal Rat Trap, but at least it does that. So it's something where you could get something where like me personally, like one that I would like if they would do is Transmetal Megatron. The original Transmetal Megatron is extremely fragile because of his brown plastic that just breaks like, hard candy.
Right in your hands.
So it'd be really cool, if they, maybe not reissued it, but, or if you own the Japanese version, which again is different colors, but, it's something that if you reissue it, you'll get an opportunity. I know that in Armada, they took that mold and they repainted it as a character called aptly Predacon, not a very original name, but it showed that you could reissue that mold and now you give it a different color of plastic and it's not fragile anymore. So it shows that right away. And the last reason, and again, the purpose for reissues to exist is just for the heck of it to create new characters. A lot of times with eHobby, you'd get a reissue, and that reissue, let's say it's a reissue of Hound, and then they have that mold and they go, hey, why don't we repaint this Hound mold now that we've reissued it into a new character? And that's what has happened a lot through eHobby, where they'd be like, hey, we reissued Cup, why don't we repaint it as Orion Pax? Hey, we reissued, they do that a lot. I know that when Skids and Mudflap were characters in the Revenge of the Fallen movie, they took the original G1 Skids and did a 2-pack where it was Skids and Mudflap, but, like the original Skids toy from G1, but done in Skids and Mudflap colors. So they did like a 2-pack. And again, new characters. A good example of that, which people don't realize, Sunstorm. Sunstorm, while it was a show character for many, many, many years just in the background, the first time he actually got like an official toy release was they repainted Starscream because he had a reissue in Japan and finally gave us an official Sunstorm Generation 1 toy. So there's a lot of that. So that's another good thing that reissues exist for, to give us stuff like that. And a cool black repaints we get once in a while and stuff like that. But either way, that's pretty much why I wanted to talk about reissues and its purpose and how it helps out people, and how while it could sometimes damage the market, in general it does help in a lot of other areas, especially when it comes to getting accessories for characters. Sometimes like just getting that one gun for a character will cost you as much as the whole figure. Yeah. So you're better off getting the reissue, and getting that accessory. There's a lot of little things like that. Little changes here and there. Sometimes chrome weapons they're cast in black, so it's a little different. But as a whole, pretty cool stuff. And I just wanted to just talk about reissues and how they've changed throughout the years and how we have them now on the shelves, which is pretty cool to be able to get some Generation 1 Transformers in their Generation 1 looking kind of packaging. I mean, I bought
in 2018.
Yeah, which is pretty cool, which is pretty cool. And it sounds like they're going to be doing more because it actually was quite successful initially, because when those things were coming out, they were selling out instantly. Now they finally they cooled off, and now they're starting to like sit on shelves, but only after like, weeks and weeks and weeks of them disappearing every time. So, either way, awesome stuff. Thanks, Ian McRobbie. Even though you didn't ask the question, it was something that just brought up an idea to discuss. So pretty cool stuff.